So today we're going to talk about Lewis structures. Your topic is Lewis structure, and your goal is I can draw main group elements Lewis structure. So the periodic table and electrons, periodic trends are linked to the way electrons fill energy levels, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. But remember, for each proton you have an electron that's the same amount. So as the atomic number increases, so does the number of electrons. But today, we're just going to focus on a certain type of electron, which is called valence electrons. They are the electrons in the outermost energy level of an atom, or the electrons farthest away from the nucleus. When chemists study chemical reactions, it's basically only talking about valence electrons, which is crazy. Electrons are so small, and only the ones that are farthest away from the nucleus is doing all the work in chemical reactions, of course, unless if it's radioactive. So how to tell how many valence electrons a element has? As you go down a group, the number of electrons in the valence shell stays the same. As you go across, left to right, the number of valence shells of the main group elements increases one by one. This ignores the transition metals. So you do need to make sure you're typing out everything that's underlined. If it's highlighted red, then it is a vocabulary word. Why do we need to know this? Valence electrons decide which elements can bond. The magic number of valence electrons is 8. So they are wanting 8 electrons, which is why the noble gases don't bond with anything, because they already have 8 Lewis structures. So now I'm going to go over what Lewis structures are. They're also called electron dot structures, but it's the same exact thing. They are the element symbol, which represents the atom's nucleus and inner electrons, and surrounding the symbol there are dots representing the number of valence electrons of that element. So how to write a Lewis dot structure? First, I'm going to go over the different steps, and then I will go over practice problems with you all and how to draw these. Step 1, write the element symbol. Step 2, calculate the number of valence electrons that element has. Step 3, write the symbol and place a dot next to it in a circle rotation for each valence electron. You can have up to 2 dots per side. So now I'm going to show you guys how to draw Lewis structures. Well, before you can draw Lewis structures, you need to know how many valence electrons an element has. And the way you do that is it's just where it's located. If it's in this first row, you will have 1 valence electron. So hydrogen has 1 valence electron, lithium has 1, sodium has 1, potassium has 1. Everything in this column only has 1 valence electron. In this second column, they have 2. So beryllium has 2, magnesium has 2, calcium has 2, and all of these others will have 2 valence electrons. We are going to skip the transition metals, so we're not going to worry about those, and then we'll come over here to boron. If it's in this row, it will have, or column, I should say. If it's in this column, it'll have 3 valence electrons. So boron has 3, aluminum has 3, gallium has 3, indium has 3. They all have 3 valence electrons if they are in this row. Next is 4. So if it's carbon, silicon, germanium, anything in this row will have 4 valence electrons. It's not a surprise, but the next column has 5. So if it's in this column, it has 5 valence electrons. If it's in the next column, it has 6. So this has 6 valence electrons. The next column has 7. So if it's right here, it'll have 7 valence electrons. And this last one will have 8 valence electrons. So how you draw the Lewis structure based off that is I will give you an element you need to draw. So for example, let's do carbon. So you will find carbon on the periodic table. Carbon is right here. Since it's right here, it has 4 valence electrons. So we know we need 4 dots. You start on one side and you draw a dot. Then you just go around to each side until you get 4. So that's what the Lewis structure for carbon would look like. So let's do bromine. If we find bromine on the periodic table right here, we see that there are 7 valence electrons, so we need 7 dots. Start on one side. You'll go around in a circle till you get to 7. You can have up to 2 dots on each side, and there we have 7 dots drawn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You need to make sure you go in a circle motion. You can't just do 2 at a time or it won't be drawn correctly. So let's do one more example. Let's do nitrogen. So we find nitrogen on the periodic table. It's right here. So that's going to have 5 valence electrons, so we need 5 dots. Start on one side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's how you would draw the Lewis structure for nitrogen. If you need more examples or if you're not sure where I'm getting these numbers from, let me know and I'll be happy to explain further if needed. So in your digital notebook, right here, you have certain elements that you need to draw the Lewis structure for. What you're going to do for this, you'll click Insert, Shape, and then a circle. You will make a circle to create your dot. You do Control C for copy, Control V for paste, and you will move this around with your arrows to create that. And I did go over how to figure out how many valence electrons this has, so use that as a reference in how you create or in how you draw the Lewis structure for silicon and the others on this paper.